The moon holds so many secrets, primal instinct. Your mother definitely has an influence on you. Dreams of past lives, deja vu moment, amazing psychics, and mediums. It's that security with yourself that's important. You are not going to want to miss this video of the moon through the houses because the moon holds so many secrets about our behaviors. It holds secrets about our habits that we might not even realize that we act the way that we do. Find your moon, find which house it's in, and watch not only for yourself, but also for your children, your parents, your friends, and your partner, absolutely, to find out why they might mysteriously act the way they do and some of the hidden secrets that they may have. The moon is not only our emotions. And I know as astrologers, a lot of us think that, we describe the moon as being our emotions, but actually, the moon holds our past lives, it holds our past memories, it's our subconscious. So, a lot of the behaviors that we have, we're actually reacting to possibly our past memories and past lives. I have so many clients tell me that they can't relate to their sun sign. I think a lot of this is because if you're born at night or you have your ascendant, your rising sign in Cancer, or your moon is in Cancer, or even your sun, you relate more to your moon sign and moon placement than you do your sun sign. So if we think about babies, they react on instinct. The moon is our primal instinct. And babies and children, they show their moon placement a lot more than they show their sun placement. It's because they're reacting to that primal instinct. And that's what the moon is. So when we're walking in the moonlight, we're in the shadows, right? So only partial things are revealed. So I hope today helps because I'm going to reveal some of those things that have been in the shadows for you. And hopefully, you can really get a lot of good information and good advice out of the house that your moon sits in. So I'm going to give you the good, bad, and maybe even the ugly about the house your moon is in. And just remember, the moon is also about the women in our life, our mothers. So let's get right into that first house. So, the first house, if your moon is in the first house, it's unique because the closer the moon is to the ascendant, it can actually affect the way we look. Like if you have your moon really close to the ascendant, you may have rounded features. Your body may be rounded, your face may be rounded, kind of lunar like. You may have the appearance of youth about you. It's really cool because you can almost tell immediately if someone is ruled by the moon or has the moon in their first house, just because they might have that curvy, soft appearance about them. So the further away it is from the ascendant, of course, it's not so as much, but this is one of the most sensitive, intuitive placements. I mean, these people wear their hearts on their sleeve. It's very hard for them to hide their emotions because they're so close to our ascendant, or even if they're not, if they're still in the first house, it still affects our emotions. The way that we perceive everything is very close, very physical, very close to our own personality. I wouldn't advise playing poker. This person, this placement does not have a good poker face, unless maybe your moon is with Pluto, and perhaps then you may have a good poker face. For the most part, your emotions show no matter what. There is such a sensitivity and even a moodiness to this placement. No matter where this person goes or what they always seem to catch the emotions around them. It's like everywhere they go, they can feel what's going on around them. So it affects them in a really personal way. I mean, so the moon actually rules the digestive system. And if you have your moon in the first house, you really have to be careful about your environment because this actually can make you sick. It can make you sick at your stomach. It can affect your digestion if you are in an emotional place that where you feel super sensitive. And this position also as well, depending on the aspects. If you have harmonious aspects, you may be really close to your mother. If they're not so harmonious, you may not be as close, but believe me, your mother definitely has an influence on you, good or bad, with this placement. It seems like the people with this placement really depend on what their mothers think about them. Also, this placement might have problems with people pleasing, because they don't want to stir up the emotional environment around them. So they really want to please other people so that they don't cause issues. Because when they cause issues, they feel all of those emotions. It can be really uncomfortable to have this placement sometimes because you are so sensitive, because you are so intuitive. Now, as an occupation, you're going to want to choose something that really speaks to your emotions, of course, but that this could be very artistic. You may want to work alone because with the moon here, it might be a little bit hard for someone else to tell you what to do. It all has to do with that first house and it being so personal. This placement especially may be really apt to gain water weight with the moon's fluctuations, like as the moon is waxing, put on water weight, or that might go away as the moon is waning again. Even for men, this is true, not just women, but I think with women, this placement can really affect the menstrual cycles and how you have your periods every month is probably really set to the attunement of the moon. So I think the biggest secret the first house holds is the reason why you may be so sensitive or even moody, because every little thing can trigger not only past memories, but even memories of past lives. So it really brings on a super sensitivity. So if you're really sensitive and you didn't understand why, maybe you have your moon in the first house. So let's move on to the second house. Is the moon in the second house the placement of the millionaire? I don't know, maybe, but it can be the place of financial success. I will say this, to be emotionally comfortable with your moon in the second house, you need security and you need stability. And a lot of this is material and financial. There's a big chance of having financial success in a business relationship with other women. Your finances can fluctuate here, just like the moon fluctuates. And this could be the house. Here's a hidden secret of the shopaholic. When you're feeling down or your emotions aren't good, that's what you do. You go and you shop till you drop to make yourself feel better. But because this is also the house of our values and self esteem and our talent, your values can change. They can be somewhat flexible according to where the moon is. Your self esteem was probably set by your mother, your values as well. And what your mother thought about your talents and values was probably or very important to you, good or bad. Because if it's harmonious, if there's harmonious aspects, you probably really respected your mother's values and what she taught you. If not so harmonious, perhaps you went out on your own to do your own thing and build your self esteem in your own way. So, financial success in this placement can definitely make you feel safe and secure. I mean, that's what this moon placement needs to feel that security. This is also the placement of the hoarder, the person that gets too possessive about what they own, where they have an obsessive desire to have more things. I don't understand everything there is to know about hoarding, but I think it's a lot of it is an emotional attachment to your possession. And sometimes with the moon here, especially if it's not well aspected, that could happen. You want to collect all of these things around you because you have an emotional attachment to them. Now, this placement also wants to collect things of sentimental value that mean a lot to them. It's not all about the value, but sometimes it's about the sentiment involved. It's just like their values might be affected by past lives, past memories that are tucked way deep down. And all of this might fluctuate with the moon. This is the person that might be the best tipper in the world on Monday, and then on Thursday, not so much. I think that there's a lot of generosity in the moon in the second house, but there can also be a stinginess as well. Another secret of the moon in the second house. And since this is the house that rules food, this person would be an amazing chef. Or if they're not a chef professionally, they may cook for their family, be really good with food and diet, nutrition. That's more sixth house, but they enjoy the nicer things in life, and that includes food and dining. They probably also love nature. This would be a good gardener or someone that just likes to spend a lot of time outside. The moon in the second would make a good publicist or someone that works with the public or social groups, because the moon kind of rules the public. This is a wonderful placement to have for financial success and financial gain for the most part. I think all of us struggle with that part of our lives at some point, but this position gets fairly emotional about the struggles that they may have with money. And that's the downfall of having the moon here, that there is such an emotional need for financial success or a security. Let me use the word security even more than financial success, because sometimes, even though we may not be rich, we can feel secure in our home environment and within ourselves. It's that security with yourself that's important. So if you can find the richness and the value of your own talents, and this is the house of talents, remember, I think that is the security you need to make you feel emotionally happy. So that's the second house, and those are the secrets of the second house. So let's move to the third house. If you have the moon in the third house, knowledge might be your security. That might fulfill your emotional needs. Now, this isn't knowledge necessarily like that feeds the ego, like maybe if your son was in the third house, but this is knowledge that you need to have on this visceral, emotional level to feel happy, to feel like you're on an even keel. You really have a need to know about things. Also, this is the house of neighbors. This is the house of our cousins, our siblings. And with the moon there, you may feel especially close to your siblings or to your neighbors or to your family. But on the other hand, if the aspects are not harmonious, you may actually have a crappy relationship with your neighbors or your siblings. You may have real struggles, especially with your siblings in this house. Perhaps you may have had to play a part in raising your brothers and sisters, or perhaps you had to kind of raise your mother, because in this placement, the mother is all important. Of course, it's probably the mother to your siblings as well, but you may have felt like that your mother was more your equal than your mom. You may really want to have knowledge about the past when you have this placement. There may be a real curiosity about past lives or even what's happened in your past ancestry. Although ancestry kind of belongs to the fourth house, there's still this craving for knowledge when the moon is in the third house, that you really want to know about the past for your family and for yourself. This also affects travel. The moon position here, you may love to take short journeys, travel in the car. You may be an awesome driver, but then on the other hand, if your moon isn't well aspected here, you may be the person that gets car sick every time you have to go somewhere, or that you just feel emotionally ill even about taking a trip. Does this go back to possibly a past lifetime? It might, but in general, these people are great with communication and marketing. They're great with their neighborhood, doing things for their community. These are all things that the moon here enjoys doing that keeps them emotionally fulfilled. So the third house moon has a great memory, though. They're able to retain the information once they get it. And they have this ability to maybe even read people's thoughts, like especially those closest to them. Probably brothers and sisters for sure, but maybe even neighbors. But they do have the ability to read thoughts. And I think sometimes they have to distinguish, is this thought mine or is it coming from someone else? They might also write for emotional therapy. I mean, journaling is great for this moon placement because they're able to get their actually put their emotions on the page. And that's a great way of communicating for them. Also, if they're a public speaker, that's a good profession for this moon placement. If you're a public speaker, you may even have the ability to sway the emotions of your audience. This is a very unique place for the moon, and I really love it. It's visceral in the way that you instinctually need to know things about your environment and about everything, but also the way that you can use writing or communication to get your emotions out. Unless your moon sign is in a water sign like Scorpio, it's very therapeutic for the moon in the third house to talk about their emotions and actually communicate how they feel to make them feel better. So let's talk about the moon in the fourth house. So, we associate the moon with the fourth house because it's associated with Cancer. The fourth house is, and this is one of the houses that the moon is truly at home in. But one thing you may not know that the closer your moon is to the IC, this is the Coeli, and all it stands for is this was the placement in your chart, the sign on the zodiac, the place in the zodiac that was at the very bottom or the lowest part of your chart. So it's the most private part of your chart. So if you have the moon in the fourth house, you may be a really, really private person, keeping your emotions private, not sharing things with anyone, probably except your immediate family. Because family is the key word here, family and ancestry. People with this moon placement are terribly attached to their family and to their root. Can we say mother and country? They may be very patriotic about the country they came from, and there may be a love for their mother, even if she wasn't a very good mother. So depending on the aspects to the moon, most of the people with the moon in the fourth house tend to love their family regardless of whether they had a good childhood or not. They're still going to be that person that stands up for their family. And oh my gosh, if you marry or partner up with someone with the moon in the fourth house, you better love their family because that's a prerequisite for a committed relationship with that person. They are so attached to their roots. Moon in the fourth house people would make great historians. They love history, especially archaeological digs of family history, anything that they can dig up about family and their roots is important to a fourth house moon. The traditions that they hold dear, it would probably really be hard for this person to start new family traditions with their own family when they, are in a relationship and have children. Big secret. This is probably the placement that never leaves home. This is the kid that's still with mom and dad at the age of 30 or 40 because they're so attached to that family home that they don't want to leave. It's hard for them to uproot themselves and leave the family environment because the moon here holds that so emotionally close to them. This is also a placement that might renovate or remodel or just rearrange, redecorate their home all the time. That it's such a special, it's like a sacred place for them. It's important to them for it to look or feel a certain way. That is what emotionally stimulates the person with a fourth house moon is their in home environment. They'd be great at real estate, especially selling homes for other people. There's a lot of different kinds of real estate, but dealing with other families would be a great occupation for someone with a fourth house moon. This placement also craves intimacy. They want to be close with other people, with the people that they love, that they hold dear in their life. I think the saddest thing for this placement is that they're is such a craving for closeness and intimacy with their family that when you come from a family background or a family that isn't close or that maybe wasn't the best, you didn't have the best childhood possibly, that it's really hard for you to get your emotional legs in place when you have the moon in the fourth house. Now, on the other hand, if everything is good and beautiful, you have that emotional background, that emotional pedestal to set yourself on, where you actually feel that primal part of you feels rested and good and can be intuitive and helpful. This is a very sensitive, helpful placement. These are the people that will take care of their parents as they grow older, set the tone for inheritance of the rest of the family. But this is the person that will plan the family reunions, that kind of thing. Family is the word, home, and these people also really like to be near the water. So it wouldn't surprise me if this fourth house moon person had a home near the water or a vacation home near the water. And that's really important for them. A fourth house moon might also be just completely unsettled by the death of a parent. And I realize that all of us would find that unsettling or emotionally traumatic, but it's especially so if you have your moon in the fourth house. It really affects you in a deep, visceral way. So let's move on to the fifth house. So the fifth house moon, the house of the child. I love the fifth house. I think we all love the fifth house. But what emotionally stimulates, what really keeps this moon emotionally stable is their creativity, their ability to express themselves through art or whatever in creative endeavor that they want to do through acting, art, music, sports. All of these are fifth house things. And people with the moon here are usually quite talented and imaginative and sometimes even childlike. What can happen is they put all of their emotional self-worth into their creative endeavors. So if they're not noticed or they're criticized, this is the point where this placement can be ugly. They need that appreciation to keep them emotionally happy. That's what makes them happy, that recognition from other people, especially when it has to do with what they have created. So this placement truly needs positive feedback. They don't take criticism well most of the time. Now, if well aspected, they may have had a mother that was fun loving and childlike, and that mom that pushes the kid that says, come on, you can do this, you can do cheerleading, you can be an actor, your band is the best in the world. But maybe if not so well aspected, they could have had a mother that was a Debbie Downer, that criticized or didn't support the creative endeavors of the fifth house moon. And this can be devastating to a fifth house moon. Like I said, they really need that positive feedback and a recognition to make them emotionally happy and secure. They also have strong attachments to children. I mean, they can be childlike themselves. This is the house of the inner child as well. I found that fifth house moons are really, really attached to their children. And if for some reason they have to be separated from their child, if something happens to their child, it's devastating for them. I've said this before. I realize that separation from a child would be devastating to any moon placement, but especially if you have your moon in the fifth house, the connection to your children is so vital and important to your emotional health. And if you don't have children of your own, you may be attached to other people's children or just love children in general. It's just part of having this fifth house moon. So not only is there like this visceral desire to express themselves, the fifth house moon also loves romance and love. The fifth house rules these things. And so it's really important to them. I mean, this is the moon that might fall in love with being in love. They want to have that romantic relationship and they may be very romantic in their nature. And this might be the romantic person that does the rose petals on the bed, or brings you breakfast in bed, or chocolate brownies after you make love. All of these things, they're very romantic and loving in their nature. I think part of that is because they are childlike. The children that think about the Cinderella story or the Snow White story, they can actually, these moon people can actually put themselves in those positions. And that's kind of what they dream of, that romantic love. They love to be in love. So the fifth house is also the house of risk taking. And for them, there might be a real adrenaline rush that supports them emotionally by doing things that are jumping out of airplanes or windsurfing, whatever the case may be. If these people aren't emotionally secure or emotionally happy, they could turn to gambling or a habit that's detrimental to them. I think this is a big fifth house secret. It is the house of the gambler. And if you have your moon there, you may be predisposed to wanting to gamble a little bit anyway. But this could turn into something not so pretty if you're not emotionally happy, all of the money going down the drain. But for the most part, if a fifth house moon receives validation for their creative efforts, if they're able to fall in love, if they're able to express that childlike happiness, they're pretty happy here. And I love the fifth house. I think this is a beautiful moon placement, especially the closeness that fifth house moons have with their children. Remember, if you have a partner with a fifth house moon, they really don't take criticism well or rejection. I would love for you to book a reading with me. Maybe a holiday reading. We can go over your transits for next year, or make it a gift for someone special so I can go over their transits for next year. I also love to do compatibility readings and look at the natal chart as well. So book a reading for the holidays. Give yourself a gift. Okay, let's move on to the sixth house. So the sixth house moon has this innate primal need for routine. Doing the same thing over and over again actually helps stimulate them emotionally. There's a need to be productive, a need to be useful, a need to help other people. All of these things go along with that sixth house moon. These natives can actually feel when something's wrong in their body. And I don't mean like they can feel sickness. It's like if they meet someone that they don't really have an emotional attachment to, they can feel it in their body. They sense things from other people by how they actually physically feel. Um, Health is really important to a sixth house moon. And sometimes their health actually depends on their emotional well being. So, the relationship with the mother of a sixth house moon could have been a mom that was overly concerned with the child's health. There could have been something physically wrong with the child when they were born, where there were lots of visits to the doctor. But health can be there can be this emotional connection with the mom and health or sickness that can even bring on conditions like being a hypochondriac, because possibly that was the only time they got attention from their mother, was when something was wrong with their health. They make amazing doctors and healthcare workers. They're great with physical therapy, Reiki, anything that involves being physically active and involving healthcare at the same time. The sixth house moon, they're excellent with these things for the most part. Now, if not well aspected, that can kind of go off in a different direction, because this is the house that can often be the catalyst for an eating disorder. The sixth house moon really has a desire and emotional primal need for perfection. When they're in their job, they want to do it well. They want everything to be perfect. They're very well organized for the most part. And it's funny because I have people ask me about, oh, well, my partner's a Virgo, but they are so sloppy or something like that. Well, this has to do with their emotions. They might have a total mess, but know where everything is. That's the kind of moon this is, where the organization doesn't have to always be outward, but inward. as I said, diet and health is really important. The eating disorder thing usually comes from a lack of body image where they really want their body to be perfect. I'm not going to go into all the dynamics of eating disorders because I don't even know. But I do know when I see a sixth house moon that sometimes if there's other aspects that I see that maybe aren't harmonious, I sometimes can tell if someone has had an eating disorder. Now, the sixth house also rules pets. And sixth house moons are amazing for the most part with small animals. Great veterinarians because they do fairly well with trauma. I think that they're good healthcare workers and they're good veterinarians, but they need a little bit of Scorpio in their chart to be great with trauma when you have the moon here. But they're really good with working with other people, nurturing them, making them feel comfortable, and the same with pets. On a personal level, my ex-husband has the moon in the sixth house, and animals love him. It didn't matter whether it was a dog or a cat or the neighbor's pet lion, whatever. Animals just flocked to him. They really loved him. And that's something that's more visceral in nature, that's more primal, that doesn't come from learning how to take care of animals, but actually comes from the inside, that lunar part of a person that just really makes them good with pets. Pets really like sixth house moons. If a sixth house moon isn't happy in their job or they don't feel like they're performing well, this can really cause health problems for them. The sixth house does rule our physical health. So having the moon here with all the fluctuations of the moon can, really put them they at a need for balance in their health life. But I think it also has moved many sixth house moons to find unique health solutions to their own problems. These are the people that may invent a new medicine or therapy, and they make great physical therapists, great health coaches. Like I said, any work with animals also applies here. But really, anything they do, it's in their nature, in their lunar nature, to want to do a good job, to do it well. Whatever you endeavor to do, you do it with all of your heart. You really do. So let's move on to the seventh house. The seventh house moon is really interesting. I tell my clients when I see that seventh house moon, this is a placement where you might give too much of yourself away. There's a real danger with this placement in losing yourself to another person, losing yourself to what another person thinks or how they feel. Or there's this primal need just to sometimes change yourself so that you fit the embodiment of what someone else wants you to be. And this kind of starts with the mother, of course. The mother could have been controlling. If it's well aspected, the mother could have been the greatest support in your life. But no matter what the aspects are, usually your mother does have an influence on your relationships with other people, and probably that committed relationship, especially the relationship with your mom and the relationship with your committed partner, kind of go hand in hand, because however you saw your mother treated in a relationship, maybe the way you treat other people or the way that you expect to be treated as well, good or bad. If you meet someone that has a seventh house moon and they don't find an emotional connection with you, it will probably never be more than an acquaintance. They don't really form relationships with people that they don't find an emotional connection with. That is that visceral part of them that needs to relate to other people on an emotional level. So if you have your moon here, you really look for that emotional connection with other people. And if it's not there, you probably just let it go. You don't form a relationship with that person. Their relationships are really, they're vitally important to them. Whether they have a partner or not can hold such an importance for the person that has their moon here. They can get their emotional happiness can really be based on whether they have a committed partnership or not. But the thing is, they can lose themselves in that committed partnership. So the important thing is if you have your moon here, to realize your own self-worth and your own value, and that you don't have to find that with another person. Although that's going to be of the utmost importance to this placement is finding that emotional connection. But their very sensitivity to other people is what makes a seventh house moon an incredible counselor or therapist, life coach, because they get it. They really understand relating to other people. So they're able to help others even sometimes if they're not able to help themselves on that emotional front, but they're able to help others find the balance in their life with their partners. Or this includes business partners as well. It's funny because it really doesn't matter what kind of partnership it is for a seventh house moon. They still need to find that emotional connection in order to function with that other person on any kind of level. I will say that when the seventh house moon is healthy, it is one of the best placements for relating because their understanding and sensitivity to other people is really a beautiful thing. When it's healthy, I think that codependency is not a problem. They don't lose themselves. They are able to have very balanced partnerships. You know, the seventh house is about balance. It's ruled by Libra. And when they find that balance, that emotional, it's like the emotional temperance card. They can have some of the best partnerships and relationships of anyone in the world, you know? So let's move on to the eighth house. The eighth house moon is, there's probably not another moon placement that has a more powerful subconscious than the eighth house moon. They just do. From a early childhood, they probably experience things that are supernatural to them. You know, could be the child that has a visitation from a relative that's died, especially in childhood. If these experiences are encouraged, they make amazing psychics and mediums. They really do. This moon placement gives them that psychic ability, that primal ability to see into the psyche of other people. And if used for good, if used for the right reasons, can be an amazing help to other people that have suffered through trauma or that want to connect with lost loved ones. So they may also have a real curiosity about life and death, a curiosity about intimacy and sex. I mean, I think this is placement, a moon placement that needs to be sexually fulfilled on a very intimate level. That's something that they crave. That's that primal craving in them to have a sexual relationship that's fulfilling, that fulfills them on an intimate level, not just a physical level, but that emotional level. There's a real need with this eighth house moon to have that, even if it's not on the surface. It's deep down, they crave that intimacy. That's something that they truly need. And if this moon is not well aspected, this is one of the placements that can come out with jealousy and possessiveness and obsessiveness and maybe even revenge. You know, they view their partners as something they own almost. They belong to them. And jealousy can come to the surface very easily. And it's a primal instinct. It comes from that deep place inside, maybe even from a past life. If you have your eighth house, if you have an eighth house moon, it comes from a place that they may not even understand why they feel this way, but there can be overwhelming feelings of jealousy and possessiveness that perhaps, they don't want to have, but it started with something unhealthy in childhood where they didn't get enough attention from their mother. There's a deep sensitivity here in this placement in the eighth house to the mother's feelings. So, depending on what kind of relationship you have with your mother, feelings of control and jealousy can rise to the surface fairly easily with this placement, but that's not always the case. I mean, if you have a healthy eighth house moon, the sky is the limit as far as what you can do with your mind, with your psyche. Reading other people's psychic mail is one of them, but also working with other people's trauma and money. These people are usually great at business. They have that innate understanding of investments and the business world. It's like they get it. They don't even have to, it's not like it's something they learned. It's something that comes with that eighth house moon that they were born with. It's a part of their emotional makeup, their understanding of the business world, their understanding of money and of trauma and even life and death. It just comes with having this placement. There can also be a great fear of death if you have the moon here. It doesn't have to be like that, but if you have a moon that's not well aspected, depending on your childhood memories or past life memories, there may be a real fear around dying, a real fear around death. On a better note, this is a placement that might gain an inheritance, a sizable inheritance through a mother or through family, probably through a woman, because we are talking about the moon in the eighth house. This is such a strong placement for the moon. And if used in the correct way, is helpful for everybody. This is a person that is able to help the world with the deeper issues in life. A lot of times, issues that other people don't want to touch, that they don't want to come near. But this placement isn't afraid, for the most part, to go to those deeper levels of intimacy, sex, trauma, life, death, taxes. So let's move on to the ninth house. So the moon in the ninth house has a visceral primal need for adventure, for wide open spaces, for to gain knowledge. They have a need deep inside them that wants to know about other cultures, other places around the world, no matter what, that they may have this natural knack for learning other languages. If these instincts are not met, if they're held back in some way, the ninth house moon can feel very closed in emotionally, like they can't spread their wings, like they can't fly the way they want to. So there is this natural wisdom to having the moon in the ninth house. There's a natural optimism. Um, they usually have this understanding of symbols and other languages, and they also have a wisdom regarding faith and religious beliefs. They just seem to have this natural understanding of all of that. And their optimism is infectious. I mean, this is a moon placement that people really enjoy being around because if it's well aspected and this is a happy moon, then most of the time they're very optimistic and they're great storytellers. They're always up for adventure, always up for a story, always up for something fun, and something new. Tradition really doesn't suit this moon sign very well. But the problem can come for this moon sign when they feel closed in emotionally, when they feel like there's no movement, when there's depression around them. I mean, truly, this is a moon placement that doesn't really like negativity. So they prefer to be around people that are optimistic like they are. They don't like negative people. It's hard for them to kind of deal with negativity a little bit. So if they had a mother that was somewhat negative or a mother that was very rigid in her belief system, perhaps her religious beliefs, then they can grow up with this pessimistic view instead of optimistic that they're never going to break free from what they were taught as a child, or they're not going to break free from the constraints of religious beliefs that were put upon them as a child or even as an adult if that mother's influence is still upon them. But when they're able to break away, This is such a lovely moon placement because they are truly up for anything, up for any adventure, and traveling is so important to them. Even if they're just traveling by reading a book, they have their mind and their emotions are connected in that there's this thirst for knowledge to get away, for the new, to find something beautiful and new in life. Sometimes they may even travel to another country because they have this affinity with this country from a past lifetime. There's actually a nice psychic ability that goes along with this placement as well, because they're very in tune to the spiritual world and they want to grow spiritually. That is part of that primal instinct they have, this desire to grow in a spiritual way, to develop a philosophy of their own that's not necessarily passed on to them by their parents. They want to grow in their own way. So they're not particularly fond of routine because it closes them in. Then it's like, if there's an adventure to be had, they want to be able to go have that adventure. What really reminds me of this moon placement is that movie, The Four Christmases, where Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon, they make plans to skip Christmas with the family, skip tradition, and they want to go to the Caribbean, I think it was. But that's what a ninth house moon might do. Skip the tradition and move on to something new or an adventurous that they want to do, because that is what feeds this placement emotionally. So if the ninth house moon is able to travel, able to have adventure, able to explore spiritually, then they're happy. So if they can break away from any spiritual chains that bind them, traditional chains that bind them, usually this is an optimistic, lovely placement to have. I am so excited to tell you about my relocation report located in the Soul Navigation shop. You get to pick 5 cities anywhere in the world. It comes with a relocated chart for each city, a report for each city, and also a ranking system that ranks things like friends, family, career, love. There's 10 different rankings. These reports are so much fun. And it's also a good thing if you're thinking about moving or just going on vacation and don't really know where to go. And if you'd like to book a personal reading instead, I love to do the relocation charts. And we can also look at your Jupiter and Venus lines in an astrocartography map. That's fun too. So now let's move on to the 10th house. The 10th house moon is definitely on display. It sits at the highest point of our chart. So this is a moon that can be seen publicly, whether the native wants to be seen or not. Their emotions are always on the public side because their moon is in that very public place. Ambition is very important to a 10th house moon. They have a deep primal need for success. So, status is what drives this moon placement for the most part. That emotional primal need to have a high place in society, to have that status, to have that success. And most of the time, they have a mother that drives them, that is supportive. Now, if their mother is not supportive in their achievements or what they want to achieve or their goals, this can be detrimental to someone that has a moon in the 10th house. They need that support from their family because very often their careers are in the public eye. And this is a placement that can be the politician because there's this deep sensitivity to what the public wants. It's really interesting because that's where their intuition lies. When you have the moon in the 10th house, you just have this deep knowing about what the public wants or what society needs and wants, especially when it comes to women. So, career and public standing make the 10th house moon feel safe. This is their safety net. This is where they feel at home. When they're embarrassed, never embarrass a 10th house moon, especially in public. They are probably not going to forgive you because the reputation means everything to them. And that's part of that primal part of them that needs that recognition. And if they're embarrassed or their reputation is tarnished, that can really harm them emotionally. It's something they may not even get over. That is how important social standing and status is to the moon in the 10th house. Even if you have a shire moon sign, you still may want to work with the public or do something that is for society, that's for everybody. As I said, this is a lot of times the placement of a politician. I mean, they could even have a save the world complex, depending on um, if the moon is happy or if it's not so happy. This placement could be used for, I don't want to say evil, but it could be used to have people follow you in a bad direction. I don't know how else to put that. It could be leading people down a path or leading the public down a path that's actually not good for them. When it's placed well, you're a big help to society. You're a help to those in need. You may even use this placement to for a family tradition. Like if you come from a family of doctors, it's this placement is very traditional. So you may follow in the tradition of being a family doctor, but usually there's some kind of status or ranking to having the moon in the 10th house. But that's what is important to them, having their goals achieved. Attaining success is what drives the 10th house moon emotionally. And it's not that they don't love their family or love their spouse or love their partner, they do. But really, on an emotional level, what is most important is having that nice public status where they're able to attain whatever goals they have in life. So, the 11th house moon is a really interesting placement. A lot of their emotional fulfillment is from friendship, it's from belonging to a group or an organization, having a place in the crowd. This is the placement that might follow the crowd because they want to have that sense of belonging. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes an 11th house moon becomes the mother of the group. They want to mother everybody because the moon is all about mother. Basically, their need to belong is what is primal in them, what they have to have that emotional happiness in their life. These are the people that say, my friends are my family, or my friends are more like family than my family is. Have you ever heard someone say that? When you feel this deeply about friendships, if you're hurt in some way by a friend, or feel stabbed in the back, or feel that the organization that you love has let you down, it can be devastating for an 11th house moon on an emotional level. This is also the placement. Have you ever heard somebody say, "Well, I don't have many women friends. All my friends tend to be guys," or something like that? Well, this might be an 11th house moon that didn't have a good relationship with mom. Their mother was not there for them emotionally. And perhaps that's why they feel like they get along with men better. This is part of that 11th house moon placement as well. This can also be you know, where you go along with the crowd just so that you don't feel left out, that you don't have that emotional emptiness. But there's a real sensitivity here regarding being humanitarian. This is the person that will fight for a cause, something they believe in is really important to them, that they stand up for what they believe in. They might be the leader of the group as far as a cause is concerned, animals, children, whatever it is that they feel in their heart that they're emotionally connected to. This is the person that will stand up for the cause and lead the way to further that cause. So for the 11th house moon to stay happy, having good friends around them, belonging to a social organization they believe in, these are all crucial when you have your moon in the 11th house. And also, the 11th house holds our hopes, wishes, and dreams. So, when your moon is well aspected, you're able to have those dreams, you're able to have those wishes. And usually, you have the support system around you to make those hopes, wishes, and dreams come true. It's really interesting. But if the moon is not well aspected, this can bring on some depression for the 11th house moon when what they want to achieve in life, especially on a social level, when these needs aren't met, when they're not able to fulfill some of these things that they really want in their life. Friendships are the most important thing. Sometimes people with the 11th house moon, especially if it's a fixed sign, they'll have the same best friends for years and years and years since childhood. They'll have this way up into adulthood. They'll have the same best friend because they truly feel like their friends are their family. That is their emotional connection. That's their primal instinct that friends are family or that the world is their family. We can go a little bit deeper with this where they feel like that the world is their family. It is truly a humanitarian placement because they want to help people on all social levels. Most of the time, if you have your moon in the 11th house, you don't have a problem with status. It's like you might be best friends with the housekeeper and also best friends with the senator of your state. It because status really doesn't matter. It's those deep innate friendships that feed you emotionally when you have the moon in the 11th house. Truly a beautiful and humanitarian placement. But just remember, if it goes wrong, you tend to follow the crowd or decide you don't want friends at all because you've been hurt. That is the emotional trap that you can fall into with this 11th house moon. So the moon in the 12th house, this might be one of the hardest placements to understand because although it may be one of the most intuitive placements, one of the most empathic placements, one of the most psychic placements, it still sits behind the ascendant. So a lot of times, all of these intuitive feelings it is really primal. We just don't understand why we see the things we do or understand the things we do. It's like, have you ever heard someone say, I just know things? Well, this might be a 12th house moon because they do. They just know things on an intuitive level. They know things about people around them, they know things about the world around them. They just somehow, on this very primal level, get things. But most of the time, they don't even understand why they get it. You know what I'm saying? So this is also a placement that might really have a connection to past lives. So the closer it is to the ascendant on the 12th house side, the closer they may feel to lives that have gone before them. They may have dreams of past lives. They may have deja vu moments where they are with someone and they think, I know this person, I've seen them before, or the deja vu moments where they go to a certain place and they've never been there before, but they're positive that they have. These are the kind of situations and things that can happen when you have a 12th house moon. So one of the most important things for a 12th house moon to learn to do is to put up boundaries, which is really hard for them, especially if the moon is not well aspected, because you tend to take in everything around you. This placement, probably more than any other moon placement, may be the one that attracts like psychic vampires, people that just suck everything out of you emotionally, and you don't even know why. It's a very psychic placement. You feel, you see emotionally with your psychic eyes everything that's going on around you. So it's really hard to differentiate your own feelings from those of the world or those from your immediate surroundings or those from the very people around you that you live your life with. So this placement is usually close to their mother, but If it's not well aspected, if the moon has problems, there could be problems with mother from another life or early childhood that bring itself into this world where you don't even really understand the emotions that you have with your mom or why there might even be problems there. Really and truly, this house, this moon placement in the 12th house, more than any other, brings in past lives and that ability to understand or know about past lives that a lot of the other moon placements don't have. But this can cause problems because if you don't have boundaries set up, it can be mentally disturbing to have images and views from past lives or from the past that come in that you really don't understand. So these people really need alone time. They need time to meditate. They need time to relax, to spend times with their own feeling. I mean, this is part of that primal emotional makeup that they have, where it can actually help them just to spend time alone, to listen to music. Music is a great way for them to relax. This can help them emotionally settle down and figure out and their own emotions from those of others. These are also people that could have possibly been raised in an institution. So just think about that. The 12th house is institutions. Perhaps they were raised in an orphanage or as in a hospital. Any institution that deals with children, they might have been in foster care. If they know their mom, usually that relationship is not a bad one. It's just that there's not many boundaries. Even if the mother passes away, the 12th house moon is probably still in contact with their mother. So, this 12th house moon placement, more than any other, is probably more karmic, where you're finishing out karmic relationships from the past or from past lives. This is a person that may actually work in a mental institution or work in a hospital. The 12th house moon is able to set up those boundaries and not be so influenced by everything around them. They are wonderful listeners. They're wonderful at understanding the emotional hangups and problems of other people, even mental illness. There's like this innate primal understanding that sometimes we're not all mentally healthy. And they're great at not only understanding these problems, but helping with them. The 12th house moon might have a world view like no other, a deep understanding of the cycles of life and death and what is really going on underneath the surface. They just seem to have a sense for it, a feel for it. They get it. They truly understand it. So I think the hardest thing for a 12th house moon is setting those boundaries between your emotions, what you're actually feeling, and what everyone around you, even the world, is feeling. It's kind of hard to turn that off when you have a 12th house moon. But this is a lovely placement, a lovely psychic placement, one that is almost a little bit otherworldly in a way. It's a good place to end this video and tell you all that I've so enjoyed doing this moon series with you through the houses, and that I hope that you've gained something out of it, especially you 12th house moons. Bye from Florida. Thank you for letting me talk to you about the moon through the houses.